Do you ever find yourself in a crossroads when it comes to decision making? Where do I go? Who do I go to? Well, in today's episode, we're going to help you answer those questions and find tips and tricks to make you improve in your decision making. Hello, my name is Z.
And I'm Jillian.
Jillian, whoa!
Not Rich.
How did you teleport here? This is amazing.
You know what? I had so much fun on the show the first time. I wanted to come back.
Yeah. Well, we were kidding around earlier, right? When we talk about fit, we always say, "Hey, what do I wear to work?" It's been a while since I've been to the office and all that. Things that we didn't even talk about back then, but now that we're going to the office more frequently, it's like, who am I? What am I going to wear? What's my statement today, right? Today, I guess I'm going like, I don't know, what's my statement? What would you say my statement is?
You went executive leadership today, 100%.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's just what I was going for.
Yeah. I went
right
IT hipster chic.
And you pulled it off. So today's episode is all about decision making, which ironically enough, even when it comes to what am I going to wear today, can even be a decision that we make, right?
Yeah.
But decision doesn't just fall in line with work, but everyday choices, all these things that we have to make and think about. Wouldn't it be awesome if we just had maybe some framework or some tools to make it a little bit easier for us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's overwhelming, all the decisions we have to make. That's why, we come up with tools to make decisions for us.
Yeah, I think you were so excited. You're like, sign me up. Here's my money.
I'm done making decisions.
Well, that's what today's episode is all about. And we're trying to decide, okay, who can we invite that would have some amazing experiences, examples of, what tools they've utilized in their leadership along their journey. And we immediately thought of Megan Amdahl. And we're like, you know what, let's go ahead and have her on. And actually, I think it's one of our first actual executives in the podcast that I recall. What?
No
first
pressure.
one. No pressure at all.
You picked a brilliant one, by the way.
And I was just like, you know what, who better than, of course, Megan. So let's give a warm introduction to Megan Amdahl, SVP of Client Experience, also our North America COO. I mean, the list goes on. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for this conversation. It's a particular area of passion for me and my team.
Yeah.
You're a hard one to introduce. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you say her title. Your title has changed, I think, numerous times every
I don't
year.
even print business cards anymore because it's outdated
That's how
by the time they
you are.
get there.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
That's why I was like, what is it again? I forgot. What's the title? There's been so many different things. But Megan, for those who don't know you, because again, this is internally but also externally for a lot of our teammates, but also partners, even future teammates or what have you.
Love that.
Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with Insight for about 13 years now, held a variety of different roles, which I absolutely love. I actually started as our controller for North America. It was a director level position, but I figured out that I really couldn't do another quarter end, another audit. I couldn't review any more reconciliations or internal controls. So really started talking to leadership about other opportunities. And that's when I, at the time, was a VP of finance, and they moved me into senior vice president leading operations and profitability, which was incredible. It started with a team size of about 360 and ended around 2,400 by the time I left the role, because we kept finding additional areas that we just thought were synergistic to bring together. So that was incredible. Ken Lamech, our former CEO, was very intentional with my career. So then he said, it would be great if you took on partner alliances and gained that experience. Then he was like, you've done that long enough. Why don't we have you remove operations and add enterprise sales? So our global enterprise sales team did that for a while, and then recently was promoted to COO for North America. And with that, I'm responsible again for operations, client experience, and I've kept partners now for about 4 years. So absolutely love the job, love the team, love Insight.
So definitely a lot of evolution and move. And talk about another topic we could have talked about would be development. Oh my gosh,
big time.
Yeah,
and having
for
a
sure.
big ally.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sure. And
Yeah.
Ken, yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So today's topic is about decision making. So just to kind of set the table, we'll probably start off with, as leaders, how do we set clear communication and set the tone when it comes to decision making, not only for ourselves, but for our team? Right. Second, we'll probably just go into like some of the tools and best practices. I think a biggest thing too we might want to tackle is roadblocks along the way.
Sure.
And then finally, we'll just wrap up with any final like tidbits that we can provide our viewers to help them with their decision making. So, Megan, one of our leadership commitments is create clarity.
Absolutely.
Would you say, or actually, what do you think create clarity falls in place when it comes to decision making? Where do you see that falling into place?
So I think a lot of times people start rushing forward to here's what we should do versus really stepping back and seeing the full opportunity. So I think one of the opportunities as leadership is to help the team sometimes take a tactical pause and say, let's make sure we really understand the full, I like to say things as opportunities versus issues, right? I mean, as often as we can positively frame things, I think is a great thing to do. And when we do it in that manner and we bring in collaborative thinkers with us and we leave egos behind, that's when I think we have the opportunity to stop, pause, think about what really matters, what's really going to move the needle, because often what's the most important thing that we decide to do is what we're not going to do. And so, sometimes it just needs leadership help to make sure that the teammates aren't rushing too fast to a conclusion that might not be the best one or over-engineering it. A lot of times 80% is better than 100%.
And I feel like that needs a mic drop right there.
Yes, 100%. And it's interesting you mentioned that because it's counter, one of the things that we learned from even Thayer, right? A lot of our executives go out there. One of the things that resonate with a lot of the leaders out there is they talk about this notion, in order to go fast, you have to go slow, which sounds counterproductive. But as you're just talking about, it actually helps tremendously because you're just going 100 miles an hour. You're missing so many things. You're maybe doing things that are taking a lot of time that maybe you could have saved time by doing it right or getting to the root cause or whatever the case may be. What are your thoughts about that notion of in order to go fast, you need to go slow?
Absolutely. I mean, just even an example from today, leadership had started to get some feedback that because of all of the organizational changes that we've made, that there's not clarity about who to go to, who to work with. We took 2 hours today and we whiteboarded what used to work really well, what we think we broke, and then, but what would be the best new state? Because we knew even in our old roles that there was opportunity to improve. So, 2 hours dedicated, all of us in the room, egos left behind, really taking time to hear one another, asking a lot of follow-on questions. And so from that, we said, actually, there's quite a bit that we need to do to get back to, or to get to the optimal state, but we're committed to it. So we're going to go slow here for a couple of months and then come out with absolute clarity for our organization. So I think it's super positive, and we need to do more of that.
Yeah, no, taking that pause and, really just 2 hours may seem like a lot of time taken away from your day to day, I can imagine, but it's well worth it at the end.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts about that term she just said, leave your ego at the door? What comes to mind?
That's a great one. I was actually wondering, sometimes when you're at the top, you have that clarity to make decisions, or at least the leeway to make decisions. I think sometimes middle management or somewhere below, you maybe feel like you don't have the option to stop or slow down. Maybe, from those aspiring leaders growing up, like how do you get that sort of liberation to slow down and ask those questions?
I think one of the ways that you can tactically implement it is add that time to your calendar. I have a life coach, and she said to me, Megan, when do you have time to hope, dream, think, read? And I laughed, right? But we actually worked on tactical ways to implement that. And so I think that's something that we need our teammates adding into their calendar and feeling the grace to do that, because Insight has, with our us being in the technology industry, we have to transform so frequently. And the best way we're going to do that is having all of our teammates feel accountable to helping us make that transformation. Our teammates are meeting often with different people than we are. And so they have amazingly great viewpoints and clarity about what's important to partners, clients, and our teammates, and we need to hear it from them regularly. I love one of my favorite kind of partners in the community, he has a weekly meeting with his brother and their co-CEOs, and the question that they ask their teammates is, tell us something you don't think we want to hear, or tell us what you don't think we want to hear. I mean, just giving that freedom to make sure that we're all being real with each other, positive feedback, negative feedback, just.
Yeah, no, I think that, that whole ego can take over sometimes, and we don't hear the things that we need to hear.
Yeah.
And the fact that they ask that question, that right away says like, hey, like, I'm just like you. I want to find the best solution. I want to empower you. That's what I heard. I want to empower you to call us out, or to identify things that are not working so we can improve on it. So that's awesome. That's
Absolutely.
super powerful. When I thought of the ego thing, again, I do have time to watch Netflix once in a while. There's this documentary right now that's about, it was back in the 80s, if I can recall, a bunch of artists that got together and sang this song. And these are like top artists of the era, right? Can you imagine the type of egos that were in that room?
Right.
And they only had maybe a small portion of the song they had to sing. But can you imagine if they all kind of took in their take, like, this is how I want to do it? No, they all had a cause, like, or they all had a goal. We want to deliver this amazing song. There's a cause behind it. And even they had a sign in their door, check your egos at the door. Because that's a big roadblock, which leads to the next question. There's tons of roadblocks that come our way as leaders, as teammates. What have been some of your best practices when it comes to helping yourself, but also your teammates overcome those roadblocks when it comes to decision making?
Probably one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten in my career was a partner that I used to work with at E&Y, and he was on the account that I moved to. And his advice to me was, hey, you're new to this company, and you have a lot, obviously, that you're learning and coming up to speed on. The number one thing that you can do to build relationships and build collaboration so that you guys can transform and move faster is for you to be soliciting advice from people. Really tell them like what you're trying to learn or what you're trying to understand, and how you think is best to proceed. And even if, Megan, you think you already know the answer and you already know what path you want to go down, just by having that collaborative conversation is going to build this amazing rapport. And what I find it's probably most companies' biggest roadblocks is when you don't have a unified, cohesive leadership team that truly cares about one another. It's a total difference, about working with one another versus genuinely caring about one another. And I think, building that rapport and taking moments and saying relationship over task, because once you have the relationships in place, the tasks get a lot easier to complete. And that's when you can truly start transforming as a company, is when you have that kind of trust. So I think people need to lean in more to the relationship building than most people do.
I like that. I like that you're not just asking questions, but you're specifically asking for advice.
Yes.
How do you think this should be done?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that approach. I need to give that a try.
Yeah, and I mean, our previous episode, we talk about having your own personal board of directors, right? Those individuals, those folks that you trust that can advise you. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times we tend to think that maybe somebody at a similar level or higher level than us we can seek. But no, you just said no. It can be anybody. Can you be your own teammates? Because they're probably dealing with experiences that you've never dealt with before. Or they're seeing something that you're not seeing that could be totally beneficial. And that's that human element part, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said even if you know the answer, to ask their advice anyway. I imagine that also kind of lends itself to kind of maybe building up their egos and confidence a little bit.
Absolutely.
That they're kind of getting credit for ideas.
Absolutely, yeah. Just as an example of why leaders always need to stay very connected to all teammate levels within an organization. I was meeting with an analyst on our global operations team a few weeks back, and she works on a lot of our big device as a service opportunities. And I said, why do you think we lose some of the opportunities direct to OEMs? Why is their offering better than ours in some regards? And she said, it's absolutely not. There's no reason that any client should ever go direct OEM. They should always go through Insight, and this is why. And she listed out 3 amazing, compelling reasons. We had her shoot a podcast after that, but it's those moments where you're just really seeking feedback, seeking to understand from somebody that's very close to something that I'm passionate about, and you just can get some of the most amazing ideas. So I will be presenting on Amplify, almost word for word what she said to me.
Oh, like a little sneak peek.
Yeah.
Watch out. Coming to Amplify near you.
Right.
So I know for the sake of the podcast and our audience, a lot of them, a lot of the ones that listen to us probably work with us, or they're in the channel, or they're in the IT industry. But for those that don't, when you mention OEM, can you elaborate a little bit about what that means?
Original equipment manufacturer. So that's really saying the people that are creating the hardware technology that we sell, versus ISV is when we're mostly saying the software technology that we sell. But you're right. I do love an acronym.
We all do. Always
right. Yeah.
So in that same, in the same vein that we're talking about, one of the tools that we use, and you're a big advocate of it, because earlier, we talked about, who was somebody who in an organization, quite a few, to be honest, but one that is a champion and somebody who really instills this technique or this tool and empowers our team to use it, was yourself. So tell us about it. Now it's known as completed staff work. Okay, It's an army or military term, but Insight, we've changed the name for our culture and what fits for us, and it's before action review.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how you've instilled it or utilized it in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really is a methodology to be able to push decision making down to lower levels within the organization. And the reason why that's important is it builds scale within your company. And if you want to become a much more sizable company, and as you grow and you get more matrixed, ensuring that you're empowering people to make decisions improves everything. It improves your culture, it improves your teammate development, and often your client experience. Because think about it, in your own lives, when you're interacting with an associate at a store, and they're empowered to make an out of policy decision for you, your brand loyalty goes up like that. So we recognized back when I was leading operations and profitability that we had a scale problem. And so we employed this technique, and really what it is it helps our teammates with critical thinking, because when there's an opportunity or potentially an issue, what they're asked to do is stop, make sure they fully understand it, and then and they explore the different options in terms of how we could optimize the issue or the opportunity. And so through that, they have to really thoroughly understand it, and then they summarize it. And so the great part about it is they do an executive summary about what the issue or the opportunity is. They make sure they're giving you context. So, if something's highly political, or, this team wants this and this team wants that, they include that context in there. So nobody's not understanding the full situation. And then they stop and they make recommendations. And then at the end, they submit it to their leader, and their leader if it's done well, can just review it and simply provide approve or decline on the recommendation. What I found is it's often not approve or decline. It's, you said you recommend option 1. Why couldn't we do option 2 with this tweak? And this is why I'm thinking of the tweak. So what you're doing is you're building scale because you're giving them how you think, but you're jumping off from a very informed position. And so what I consider success with completed staff work is you have individuals go from seeking permission, asking what to do, to saying, hey, I'm about to do this, to saying, I've been doing this. So if I think about it, I don't spend time really asking my boss for permission to do things at the level I am in the organization. But that progressed over time. And when you employ tools like this, that's how you get scale. So we started it at first, senior managers and above, and it took off so well. I was a huge sponsor of it. When I would get a really good completed staff work, I would send it out to the whole organization. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, this is so good. Look at this. And this is what's great about it, right? Yeah. So then people were like, getting hype, I want to do that. I want to be blasted to 2,400 teammates, right? And so that's when we really started to see the adoption of it, down to the individual contributor level. So it's very rare now that I have to flip a note back to the team and say, hey, can you take time and put this in a completed staff work format? But that's what I do. I don't accept like chaos in an email any longer,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And it's funny when you said that, I'm like, I was the recipient of a lot of that. Like, hey, I want this. Can we have this? Can we get some training? And I'm just like, where is this coming from? Who is championing this? And I'm just, now I know the origins. But no, it's such a powerful tool as a leader. Who wouldn't want their team to, come to them and saying, have a powerful recommendation. Here's the opportunity. I love that now. And now I'm going to be using that. Here's the challenge of the opportunity we're facing. Here's how we got here, the context, right?
Yep.
Here's those historics or how it ended up. And what I love about that, when I do the trainings and talk to a lot of leaders and teammates, I always stop there and say, why do you think this is important? Why do you think it's important for us to go back and understand how we got here? Mm-hmm. And right away for them, it starts to say, well, it makes me now get better clarity of, why this even got started. And it just allows me to have a better understanding, because we're easily can say, this doesn't work. This is a challenge, fix it. Now it's like I'm taking ownership, and I did my research. I've taken the time to investigate. So I love that step. But then the last part, people have a hard time with this, is I have to come up with, various options. And then finally, here's my recommendation. People have a hard time with that. Why do you think that is? And if you want to share, like, what do you think people have a hard time with? Okay, I've done the research. I know this is how we got here. But now I have a couple options, but I'm hesitant. Why do you think people would be hesitant to share their recommendation?
I think it's vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there that you could, quote unquote, be wrong. And so that's why I think the response from the leader is super important too. I usually would start with, totally get where you're coming from here. This is how I'm thinking about it. And so you try and make it a bit conversational. So it's not just like, no, do option 2, like you're not going to really build great, people feeling, like so empowered if it's all in that interaction and in the moment.
You're giving context back to them of
right
your decision. I love the dual benefits too. You're coaching and teaching your teammates to do critical thinking, but also, as you mentioned, you're no longer dealing with a chaotic, unmanageable inbox of questions and problems.
Right, where you're scrolling through and you're like, who's this person? Do they work at Insight or they work all of that's gone. And it gives you a lot more scale as a leader. And this is something that I think more leaders need to think about. As soon as my teammates get good at something, I remove myself from the process. Like, okay, you're good there. I'm going to go work over here. And so that's the other thing is, the more you can push those approvals down, the more I can push to my leaders and they can push down and so on and so forth. And now all of a sudden we're all doing jobs that are appropriate for the roles we have within the organization versus getting sucked into activity versus productivity.
Yeah, and that was the theme of this season, right? Was like, hey, as a new leader, you've just been, assigned a new team, or a previous leader, now you're coming back into leadership, because it happens, right? Sometimes we decide, hey, I want to go back and do something else, but then I'm coming back. The hardest part is, like, to your point, we get so busy, we want to take it all ourselves, which we know it's impossible. You're going to burn out. So this is one tool now that can empower your team to take that ownership, to now allow you to work on other things that are more impactful and valuable to the organization while your team is making the right decisions. And to the vulnerability piece, I love that you said that is a big fear of people, but as soon as you take away the nope, that's a no, give me come back. It's like, let's have a conversation, let's work on this, and then fine tune it together, which is great. And it empowers them to come back again and come back again. So awesome. What other advice, as we're wrapping up, is there any other advice when it comes, besides completed staff work, or you can continue with that? What are some examples or differences that you've seen it do to your team in general overall? Like,
one of the compliments that I've gotten is just the level of scale that my team has. And I've been asked, how did you achieve that? And so I actually thought pretty critically about it. And I think it's how I started my career. Is I was an auditor, and the way auditing works is it's very hierarchical. So you start out as a staff, and then you become a senior and a manager. The staff do all the original work, and then the people above review. they don't fix your work. They give you audit review notes, and then you go fix your work, and then they review it again. So it can seem like highly, highly inefficient, but actually it built massive scale because from those review notes, they do it that much better the next time and the next time and the next jobs. And so that's how I really work with my team is I don't take anything that they give me and make my own edits. I'll call them and talk it through kind of slide by slide, or I'll type up an email with, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and the reason I do that is if I were to just change what I got, they'd never maybe notice those nuanced differences or maybe dramatic differences from what I got to what we went forward with. And as we scale that down, it's really important. And so I think sometimes people feel like, well, it's just faster. But every time you do that, it's just faster move, you're actually not building scale within your organization. You're not developing your teammates. You're not doing one of our, leadership commitments. So that's one that I would say is probably some of these answers I think get a little repetitive hearing from all the leaders, but that's just an actual tool that I think is pretty useful.
And it goes back to in order to go fast, you got to go slow, right? Like, we it's like some leaders are probably listening to this right now and going, oh, that's going to make things go faster for me. Like, slow, be careful, right? As we know. Yeah.
In the short term.
In the short
but
term.
In the long term, as you said, you've been able to scale teams. So you do kind of have to put in the extra work in the beginning.
Yeah. So, Jillian, any other final questions or thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I do like to know when you have to make a difficult decision, who's on your speed dial?
Well, I work for Dee Berger, and I think he's brilliant. So he's definitely on the list. But what I think is awesome is it's not just my direct reports. It's really the whole team. I know most of the team really well. And so, if it's a specific issue, I kind of know who to go to know the on the streets view. I know, okay, well, this is going to have to be put in a super executive format so I could pull this person into. So I think it's about building the team and then leveraging them and not having egos about who you meet with, and really going to the source because you're going to be so much more on point and you're going to get there so much faster when you're bringing those individual contributors along with you.
And it goes back to our previous episode. I love that you're building that, personal board of directors, those individuals, and you leverage them when needed, right? Depending on the situation. Like, this is a situation that I already know who I can reach out to and talk to. That was a good question. I like the little trick question. It was like a parent. Who's your favorite child or favorite kid? She's like, ooh.
The other thing that I would just say, and because I'd love for especially Insight teammates to think about this a lot, is we have incredible partners. Mm-hmm. And some of them are absolutely world-class in certain things that they do or a lot of things that they do. So, when I took over client experience, I was like super humble, reading all the books. Yeah. But I went and leveraged, in all of our relationships, say, could I meet with your client experience leader and really hear what's working best? And what was a waste of time. And so, there's just so many opportunities. And we do that, I think, pretty well as an organization. But there's a lot of partners on speed dial, too, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. So just to wrap up, Jillian, would you like to ask yourself today, you kind of in the rich shoes today, what was your biggest takeaway from today's discussion?
I have to list just one.
Okay,
Seriously, I could probably just listen to you talk about leadership and your career all day long.
Thank you.
Really just a lot of great different takeaways. I like the approach of how you do take those strategic pauses, look for opportunities or think about opportunities. I like that you are able to think about your staff, your teams as kind of like your up and coming bench, and it's helpful for both of you to take a step back and let them learn how to make strategic decisions. I think this will be one that I'll probably save for later and listen to
over and over.
Yeah.
Now, for me, the biggest takeaway is like when we talk about you're at a crossroads, just reminding leaders that you're not alone, right? You do have so many untapped resources in front of you, not only at various levels. Just start to leverage them. And I love that your example of when you're even going to a different organization or department that you don't have a lot of experience. Hey, I'm here to learn, right? And I'm going to do everything I can, leverage those partners.
What do you recommend that we do here? Right? Not just asking questions.
I thought you were asking me. I'm
No,
like,
no, no.
what are we doing right now? But yes, I love that too. What do you recommend instead of like, yeah, I need to answer immediately too, giving them that time to process and think about it. So that's going to help, a lot of times. It's like now that decision has even elevated, become a better decision for you. So Megan, any final thoughts, any final takeaways that you want to tell our audience as we wrap up?
I'm really loving Jalene's fit, and I think I might
Good
be like
choice.
replicating it tomorrow. Just a heads up. So thank you.
Good choice.
Yeah. No, this was awesome. Really appreciated the time, you guys.
Yeah, thank you again for taking the time. So for more content, again, don't forget to continue to follow us, like, subscribe, share this podcast. If you know somebody that is starting leadership or is, mention, I'm really having a difficult time to making decision or helping my team, empower my team and make better decision. Share this episode with them, and I know they'll get tons of value. Just as a sneak peek, our next episode will be recorded from Amplify this year, which is exciting. Our topic is going to be share leadership. So be ready for that, and we look forward to next time. Have a good one.